Gays Against Guns. It's such an honor to be here tonight, and I want to acknowledge everybody in the room as well, because you are here, and you are brave, and you are standing up by being here when you could be somewhere else, trying not to think about this. So thank you for being here. You are doing something by being here. And we're going to hear from our panel. I'm going to introduce everybody and thank you all so much for being here tonight. So we have Carolyn Dixon. Carolyn is a mom, a survivor, who lives in South Jamaica, Queens. Nothing and no one is going to prevent Caroline from fighting for funding, resources, and laws for families in Black and brown communities in the battle against gun violence. Brooke Baker, pronouns are she and her, is an ever-changing queer Black activist merging fashion, education, and marketing to foster equity and inclusion. Baker's work has advanced the movement to end gun violence, promote body positivity, racial and social justice through different mediums of artistic expression, ranging from fashion design to communication management, and promoting the importance of self-care. Yeah. Liz Migueles is a member of Gays Against Guns, and we are a New York gun control and LGBTQ+ advocacy group. Liz is often organizing direct action pop-ups with fellow GAG members and designing art and graphics for future events. We are honored to have here as well Scott Pappalardo, a gun owner. And Scott is famous on Facebook and YouTube for dismantling his beloved AR-15, and that video has received more than 30 million views, and Scott has since become a co-leader of Moms Demand Action in Orange County, New York. And our own Antonius Wiriadjaja?
It's okay.
Sorry, I ask everybody beforehand, and I know Antonius so well.
It's Antonius.
Okay. Antonius was an innocent bystander of a shooting, and he's here to represent as a survivor. He was a victim of a shooting 1 block away from his home in Brooklyn. He is a former Fulbright scholar and currently teaches new media at a community college. So welcome, panel. Why don't we have everybody, Caroline, would you start and just say a word about yourself, and then we'll start with questions.
My name is Carolyn Dixon, May 5th, 2014. My son was murdered in front of me over a parking incident and took his last breaths in my arms. From there, I remember asking my mother, where do I go from here? And she said, you live. And through my trials and my trauma, I realized that in the Black and brown community, we did not know how to heal. So I was fortunate enough to go to the new school where I attended and learned about healing and trauma. So I started my own nonprofit called Where Do We Go From Here? And what I do is help families live their new life without their children.
Hello everyone, my name is Brooke Baker. I am the Director of Communications for Youth Over Guns, which is a youth-led advocacy organization that centers marginalized communities in our daily fight to end gun violence. So, keep it short.
Hi, my name is Migueles. I'm a member of GAG here in New York, and I'm also a graphic designer based in the outskirts of Boston, which is also extremely affected by gun violence. When I moved to New York, I knew it was time to, do something and act up.
Hi, I'm Scott Pappalardo. Like she said, I'm a gun owner, and I was called to action a few days after Parkland. And I decided to get rid of my AR-15, and the only way for me to do that without the fear of it getting into someone else's hands was to destroy it, and Facebook was my catalyst to give me the courage to do that. And because of the positive response I received through Facebook, I started to reach out and educate myself, and found Moms Demand Action, and it's changed my life.
Hi, my name is Antonius, and on July 5th, 2013, I was walking down the street towards the subway in the middle of the day, and a man started shooting at a pregnant woman in front of me half a block away. She was shot and she fell, and another bullet hit me in the chest. And I woke up from a coma 4 days later, and I was the happiest person on earth. And I was also the angriest because they had told my mother that I had died. And she drove for 4 hours thinking I was dead, thinking she was gonna identify my body. I was recovering, and it took a long time, and I had gotten better. But then a year after my own shooting, a man who had saved my life, he put his hand on top of my chest to prevent me from bleeding out. He was shot and killed in a separate shooting. His name is John D. Morant. He was a barber, and he saved my life, but I wasn't there to save his. So since then, since my recovery, I've been joining every group, really, it feels like. I see you at Moms, I've seen you with Youth Over Guns. I haven't worked with Carolyn yet, sorry, Miss Dixon. But
You will now.
I've been part of GAG, I'm part of Everytown. If you're, if you're for preventing what happened to me to happen to anybody else, I am with you.
So thank you if you've given us questions. And our first question is for Carolyn. And Carolyn, can you tell us what are the most effective things that you've seen local and state officials in New York do about gun violence? And what's the top thing that they should be doing that they're not doing?
You want the truth?
Yeah.
You know we do.
For my community, it's nothing. Because in the black and brown community, we do not have a Walmart or any gun stores where we can go in and buy guns. Trafficking is a big issue in the black and brown community. I'm not against guns, but they should not be in communities where you cannot buy them and where you're restricted from having them. Moms Demand Action, Youth Over Guns, the Parkland children, they're doing a big fight, but their focus is on schools. Moms Demand Action, I love them because they focus on laws. And what I need for society to do, the nation to do, is to focus on trafficking as well. Because in my community, we have lost 12 people in one day. And they're not from assault weapons. They're from, 45s, 9mm, my 9mm, I don't know, but they're not assault weapons. And to me, we're losing too many of our kids, and nothing is done about it in regards to trafficking. So, really to me is nothing that they're doing. It's a lot of talking and passing bills, but they're not passing all the right bills for everyone.
Can you describe what trafficking is?
Illegal guns coming into communities that not supposed to have guns. South Jamaica, Queens, we do not have stores where we can get guns. So someone is bringing them into our communities. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Scott Pappalardo, I wanted to ask you, what do you think responsible gun owners should be doing to prevent gun violence?
The first thing a responsible gun owner should do is properly store their weapons. So many weapons are taken out of the household and used from school shootings to shootings on the streets. If you properly store your weapon, no one's going to get their hands on it. A lot of the weapons that she's talking about are stolen. They're stolen from homes. If you have them locked in a safe, no one's going to get their hands on it. So that's the first thing that they can do. And I just want to bring attention to what we saw in Virginia with the militias that were there. That's not the face of your everyday gun owner.
Right.
Those are extremists. The majority of gun owners agree with background checks and common sense gun laws, red flag laws. So so responsible gun owners should get behind that legislation, so it has a better chance of passing. And as a responsible, law-abiding gun owner, you shouldn't have a fear of a background check or a red flag law. It's there to protect everyone.
That's right. Okay. Brooke, how do you feel Parkland has played a role in mobilizing younger people around the issues of gun violence?
I believe, and it's kind of hard for me because I was working in trying to end gun violence before the Parkland shooting. That was definitely a crazy experience. But I do believe that and not just the one shooting itself, but I do believe that especially Black and brown communities deal with gun violence, and they try to normalize that type of violence and trauma in Black and brown communities specifically. So the one thing that I really love about Youth Over Guns is that we center marginalized communities in the work that we do. I do believe that it's really important that when you're having conversations about certain issues, you make sure that the communities that are disproportionately affected by it are at the forefront, are at the table, and have a voice as well. And that was something that was really important to me because gun violence was a part of my life even before I was born. So it's just really insane to me. It's a generational problem. It's a real problem in Black and brown communities, and it's impacting people in such a different way that I do believe that all of these different things do combine together and force us to really figure out what the problem is and provide awareness to it and try to evoke change. And so with that, that is what I truly believe. I believe that the youth are finding their voice, they're finding their power, they're understanding that something that recently one of my leaders in Youth Over Guns really kind of spoke into me about, that I feel like was really what kind of pushed me into doing advocacy and activism, was changing my anger into advocacy. Because that is a problem as well. That's a huge problem in the Black and brown community. We do not have proper support. We do not have proper awareness. We don't have grief counselors, guidance counselors, anything like that. The school to prison pipeline system was you know what I'm saying? All of these different problems that Black and brown people face, Black and brown youth face at such an early age. And it's really, really important to me that these things are really brought to attention, and that I'm so proud of the youth of today for being able to make that change and being able to kind of transfer that energy, that anger, that trauma into the change that they want to see and to ending the problem. And that is what I have seen in people that are younger than me, people that are older than me. I do believe that proper conversations are being had and awareness is being brought forth.
You know, I'm a high school teacher in Brooklyn, and it's exciting for me to see this film, and yet, I go into my classroom and I see kids, and I look at this film and I see how kids have gone through this trauma, and we have a perception of them as dealing with this in some way as being adults. But, I know the 15-year-old, the 14-year-old, the 17-year-old, and this is a child, and this is what's happening in our society. Yeah. Let's see now. I wanted to ask Antonius, can you describe the effect of your experience in years after?
Leading up to that, though, I will point out that when I was shot, I was employed by NYU as a postdoc, and I had really good insurance, and I had a really good support system. I have a wonderful family who takes good care of me, so I was able to get the help that I needed. And one of the things that they noticed, other than being in constant pain, was I was acting very funny. And they had realized that I was hearing things, and I was actually delusional. And I thought the shooting was still happening. And I look back and I watched that movie again, and I'm thinking, Brooke Harrison, she's 14 or 15 years old. And sure, she wasn't grazed by a bullet, but that trauma is still there, and that's the thing that lingers. That's the thing that stays, and it's hard because I have scars from my shooting, and I'm sure most of you have seen it. If you've Googled me online, you can see them. And the scars are huge, but they're there. I can show it to people. I can show it and I can be like, this is what happened to me. But it's so hard to show the scars that are inside, right?
Yes.
Because you can't. It's not visible. And it's not like you put a Band-Aid on it. So you're asking me what happened to me years after? 6 years after my shooting, I was gonna go see you actually at Radio Gag, or at least somebody else at Radio Gag. And I think I got lost somewhere and I went into this neighborhood in Brooklyn where I was shot. And I wasn't expecting to have a moment of flashback, but PTSD just hit, you know? And I was just walking like I was that same day. And then suddenly I just called you up and I said, I'm sorry. Or actually, I think I called Paul up and I said, I'm sorry, I can't go to Radio Gag right now. I have to go home and I have to deal with this. And actually, you know, I'm still working on these things now. And even though I'm a reasonable adult, it's hard. It's hard. It's been 7 years and I'm still struggling. And it's hard to explain why.
Liz, we want to ask you, why do you think direct action is needed for the issue? And how do you think it will affect change?
I think direct action is important because I'm sure I'm not the only one who, when watching this documentary or hearing all of the different stories that come out every day about all of the gun violence that permeates this country, it really pisses me off, honestly. It's just this like forever kind of anger and dread and a feeling of helplessness that this is, you know, a bullet. You can't fight a bullet. So I feel like direct action is good for community. It's good for yourself to be able to get out there, you know, with your people, you know, walk, yell, chant, make your signs, be together, make your voice be heard in some way, in any way, just to be able to, you know, kind of release that energy. It's also a good entry point for a lot of people as well. You know, at GAG we meet every other week for 2 hours. So I could say to my friend, hey, do you want to sit in a room for 2 hours on your Thursday? Or do you want to come and take a walk with me on Saturday? And, you know, more likely than not, they'll join me for a protest march and brunch afterwards or something. They'll be more intimidated about the idea of, well, we got to sit down and talk about who do we have to call, you know, what laws are we going to be supporting, what bills do we want pushed, you know, who do we want to start a protest against, all that kind of stuff. That can be very, very intimidating for someone who feels overwhelmed and is new to a cause. I think direct action is a good way to build community and to get the word out there to people who might have an interest in your topic but not a full understanding.
Thank you. So I wanted to open it up. I wanted to ask you, maybe more than one person wants to answer, what are your thoughts about the school lockdowns and lockdown drills?
I'll speak on it. Unfortunately, today, it's a necessary evil. What Mr. Pollock is talking about is fortifying the school and making it more secure, and I fully back that. We need to make it safer. You know, I'm very torn on should a student be exposed to a lockdown drill. Now, I live in Orange County, New York, and they do lockdown drills and differently. You know, the students aren't involved in the actual procedures of it. But my fear is no one knows how they're going to react in a situation like that. So if you have a teacher that freezes and the students don't know what to do, then what happens? we have to get to the point where we're stopping the guns from getting into people's hands and taking them away using red flag laws before they get to a school. But sadly, with what we see happen all the time, it's a necessary evil.
Anyone else like to address that?
Well, I don't even know how to begin with that because we don't have lockdown laws in South Jamaica, Brooklyn, so I wouldn't even know the first procedure what to do. Like you said, we would have to be in that situation to know what to do. And if it's not brought into our communities, even though we haven't had a severe school shooting yet, thank Lord, what are the plans? You understand what I'm saying? So once again, in the Black and brown community, there's no focus when it comes to gun violence. There's none.
I want to just add also, there's a lack of empirical evidence that shows that any of this is working, and largely it's because there's no money in funding any gun violence prevention work, especially not in the brown and black communities. Nothing is being researched. We don't know the effects. We don't know the after effects of what these lockdown drills are doing to our children. And I'm part of many studies actually, because I blogged about my recovery and the long-term consequences of having been shot and surviving and also going through PTSD. And I'm a primary source, and it's crazy for me to think about, like, you're getting this from me, from now. And they got it from my blog, So there's a need for this to be looked at in terms of facts, and also for us to fund whether these are working or not, and it's not happening.
Yeah.
And I'll say I grew up doing lockdown drills. I remember doing lockdown drills in elementary school. But I also feel like the notion of school shootings has become a lot more elevated since I've left school. I remember after I graduated college even, talking with my parents being like, well, we don't have to worry about that anymore at least. So I think the lockdown drills I hear about now seem to be a lot more intense than anything I had to go through. I remember our lockdown drills being like, principal has a code word on the intercom that they'll say, that means that we're in a lockdown drill. You go to a certain place in the classroom, maybe you'll go under your desk and stuff like that. But I hear about lockdown drills now where they have a fake shooter roaming the campus, or they'll have a teacher go down the hall like banging on doors and stuff like that. That seems unnecessary.
Crazy.
That seems like we're putting our kids through something that they absolutely do not have to go through. So I think that there needs to be some sort, definitely studies done of what actually is effective. What do we actually need to be doing in a crisis? Because even in this documentary in Parkland, the shooter walked out.
Yeah.
He blended right in with everyone. So what's actually the solution here? Because what we're doing now is just us making it up as we go.
But part of the problem with lockdown drills and school shootings is most of the time it's either a current or former student who knows all the procedures of a lockdown drill. And can blend in, and so it is kind of pointless. I mean, we're sitting in this room right now, and we have sprinkler heads right there, a smoke detector right there. But in a school, they have all the safety for fire prevention, and if you try to look up the statistics for students that have died in a fire in a school, I found one in the 1950s.
Wow.
But we're constantly having these shootings. And we can't even put a device on a door because of fire codes to prevent the shooter from getting into a classroom. And for me, if you go into a classroom and you tell every student to get in that corner, and I gain access into that classroom, such as Sandy Hook, what's the outcome going to be?
What's the outcome?
So, again, I you hate to make everything fortified, but you have to prevent a shooter from getting in the first place, and prevent them from getting the firepower to do the damage.
I think, though, something that's also important to mention when talking about that, I think it's really difficult to have that conversation without also mentioning the school to prison pipeline system and how we're also criminalizing the youth.
Yes.
I think it's really important to also mention that in this same conversation, because of the fact that especially in black and brown, in school districts where it's predominantly black and brown students, the students there are criminalized.
Yes.
You know, when I was growing, like we have enforcement in our schools. We have we have metal detectors. We have like different things like that are happening. There's not actual support, and it's actually adding to the it's adding to the problem. And it's really criminalizing, especially black and brown youth. And I do think that that is really necessary to also add into the conversation when talking about this, because this doesn't really happen to predominantly white schools. It only happens to really black and Latina communities. And it's really important to note that.
And just to piggyback off of this young lady, when my son was murdered, I was told to look on the internet. And when I looked on the internet, I saw a picture of my son being wheeled through the emergency room with all types of, things put on him. And I was like, wow, where was the privacy? Could you have asked me, was it okay? Because if you Google Darrell Lynch now, you'll see them rolling him into Jamaica Hospital, dead on a stretcher. So, you don't see that from Parkland shootings. You understand what I'm saying? Once again, in the black and brown community, we're treated differently. Right away, it's either drug-related or gang-related. It's not right. And right now, I have my only granddaughter that my son who got murdered gave me. And I do not want her to go on the internet to see a picture of her father on a gurney dead. And I find that to be very, very disrespectful. But once again, it's the biases and the division.
I think it's really important to note the effects of these different things that we do to our kids in school when they're going into school, checking their backpacks and different things like that. I think it's important to know how it affects them. If we're, provide the support, provide the care. There's no as I said before with the guidance counselors and everything, like Greek counselors, that's not a resource available.
Not at all.
And that's a serious problem because we face more backlash, black and brown people specifically. And I think it's really important to note the support that's needed because it really does cause for misdirection and emotions and feeling and really, really being criminalized. It really is. So I do think that that's so important to really note, especially when talking about this.
Wow, great, thank you. We want to open it up and we'll take a few questions. I know everybody's been here for 20 minutes or more, so we'll take about maybe 5-10 minutes for questions. Is there anybody who has a question? Yes.
Hi, my name is Leah. I have a
Hi,
question
Leah.
for Brooke. I know a lot about the work that you do, and I think you're amazing. And I would love if you could be able to share with everyone in this room the work that you do with fashion and how you integrate that with social justice and all the other things that you've been planning and doing this year, especially with your crews and things like that. I would love if you could share with everyone.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you, sis. I have been very much so devoted to providing safe spaces for black and brown people. I've been really devoted to also really sparking change and really supporting activists and advocacy organizations that are really doing the work. I have been a director of communications for Youth Over Guns for about I'm now over a year. Am I over a year now?
In March.
Oh, in March. I'm close to now a year. I'm close to a year. And I have really become exposed to so many different people and things I really do want to do more. So I own a clothing line called Shop Yabo. And I'm launching my Give Back collection. So I'm launching a line of slogan t-shirts that deal with a lot of issues that the youth face. And I'm also collaborating with different activists for each different issue, and the proceeds from the Give Back collection go to supporting activists, supporting advocacy organizations, supporting survivors, supporting really the people that we're really doing this work for, and that are also supporting us in the same time. And I'm also hosting a Caribbean cruise retreat for black and brown people, providing them workshop speakers and a safe space as well as professionals to be able to enhance their careers, be able to heal mind, body, everything like that. So that's really amazing. Something that I'm also offering is that I also am launching this year. And then, of course, the daily work that I do with Youth Over Guns, that's really become like one of my hearts and passions. And we just recently launched our newsletter called The Orange Report, and it's really amazing newsletter. We talk about different things. We provide news that are not in the mainstream media, because that is, I would believe, my strange relationship that I do have with the Parkland shooting. I really did notice how much attention, I kind of got upset with the media for a long time, because the amount of attention that the Parkland shooting got, but the lack given to Black and brown communities. You know, there were so many recent shootings at HBCUs that people don't talk about. There was just a shooting at Clark Atlanta recently, and not too many people know about it. Also talking about, for instance, the gun violence epidemic against Black and brown trans women. These are all important things that the Orange Report highlights. We highlight marginalized communities that for some reason mainstream news do not deem to be important enough to be in the headlines. Right. So once again, I really do appreciate you, and that's basically everything I've been doing. I really have been trying to provide safe spaces and healing and provide awareness for Black and brown people.
Great. Okay. A couple more questions. We have Sunny and Kathy, and then maybe we'll have one more. And Chef. Okay.
Could I ask you guys, what's your one action item that you think everybody in the audience can do to better support you? And this is in particular to Brooke and Caroline, but to everybody, if you want to answer, like when we go home tonight, it could be reading an article or supporting your organization. What's the one call to action that you would like us to do?
Support. It's very hard to receive the support, so we can give it out to those in the Black and brown community. And I hate to keep saying the Black and brown community, but we're forgotten. Right. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. You know, we're forgotten. And like I said, if I wasn't able to understand trauma and healing, I would have been stuck. I was very suicidal. Now, like with my organizations, you know, by the blessing of God, I even left a job to do this work. I don't get a regular paycheck. This is from me because I know how it is being a parent without your child. It's hard. So, you know, I'm planning this big event in July where I'm taking like 20 mothers to Kalahari, because we wear masks in order to keep families and communities together. And most of us have not had the time to grieve due to dehumanized loss, because we have to keep peace. So through my trials and tribulations and my understanding, I'm going by what I went through to help other families to get to their new beginning of this new life without their loved ones. So all I ask is for support. Support.
That's right, Ms. Dixon.
I guess we can like go down.
Yeah, we should just go down one.
Yeah,
Okay.
that works, right? Okay, so I would want to say, please definitely support. I definitely think that if you do at the time, please subscribe to the Orange Report. Donate, please. Not even just Youth Over Guns, but other advocacy organizations and activists. And I definitely, it wouldn't be right if I didn't do it. It's Black History Month. Please recognizing your privilege and recognizing how you can become more inclusive in your advocacy. I think that is really important in all of us. I think it's really important not to make yourself the voice. It's important not to make yourself the what's the word? The figurehead.
The figure.
Yes, for other communities that you do not represent. It's important.
That's right.
Allow for them to have the platform. Allow for them to have a voice. You know, you may think that you're doing your job, but please recognize how your privilege can sometimes be toxic in the fight to end gun violence as well.
That's right, Brooke.
That's right.
I think in general, if you are interested in fighting the gun violence epidemic in this country, I think the first step to take is to educate yourself about the statistics and decide where in the spectrum you want to stand. I think a lot of the conversations I have with other people in this community are, what type of gun control are we asking for? You know, what are our asks? Where do we draw the line? And I think knowing and being able to stand firm in what type of gun control you are asking for is very important. I think in terms of Gays Against Guns, how to support us, if you are free on every other Thursday, we have our meetings at the LGBT Center in New York. We have one tomorrow, and it's 7 to 9. We have a sign-up sheet. And if you aren't free, that's totally fine. We have all of the social medias, and we post our actions there. So if you can't come to an organizing meeting, we'd love to see you at one of our direct actions.
Being a Mom's Demand volunteer, I have to say, text ready to 64433.
Good boy.
Text
ready to 6433.
But get involved.
Yes.
I don't care what organization it's with and who you're supporting. I spent 50 years of my life sitting on the couch letting other people worry about this stuff. I actually grew up, spent more than half my life not far from where your son was killed. The corner of where I lived was the hot spot for the crack epidemic, and it made the papers. There was people being killed on that corner constantly.
Yeah.
And there's my mother sending me to go get her a pack of Cools. You know, so I do understand it from that community also. And people like Miss Dixon, I shouldn't know her. I shouldn't know, you know, Manuel and Patricia. I shouldn't know Linda Beagle. I shouldn't know any of you, you know. So getting involved brought me to a, you know, opened my eyes to a world that I kind of forgot about. Like I said, I grew up in Queens Village, and
Queens Village.
I moved out, you know, met a girl, blah, 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 moved out. And I kind of forgot about the community I grew up in until one of my friends, my coworkers, his son was killed in Brooklyn, and I went to the funeral, or the wake of a 15-year-old boy, and I watched the kids, and I watched their, you know, the pain in their faces. And that's what I saw from the Parkland students that day on the news, and it was just, it was time. So just get involved. That's all you can do. I don't care what group you're getting behind, but just be involved.
You know, Manuel and Patricia gave me this shirt. It says "Just fucking vote." So I think that's my one demand. I think I'm asking all of you to go out there and vote.
Blue.
Vote in November. Vote them out, right? Vote those
Blue.
fuckers out.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Okay. I'm going to yield my 15 seconds to the lady. Kathy, do you want to
I just have
ask a
one
question?
for Ms. Dixon. If you had Governor Cuomo in your face for 5 seconds, what would you ask him to do first? Because I know right now he's not doing anything. So tell him
Well,
what
first
you
of
want
all,
him to
if Governor Cuomo was in my face and had something to say, y'all might as well get some bail money together because
I'll
donate. My question for him would be, are you real? Are you for real? You know, because most of them seem like they're in this fairy tale world where they can't be touched. You understand what I'm saying? So my question to him would be, where's your realness in life to those that you serve, are supposed to be served? I want to know what's the realness in you. But I will never get that opportunity.
Oh, honey,
Mr. Shep, have we
Just
answered
one
your
quick
question?
question.
Yeah.
Well, I was wondering what anybody in the panel thinks about arming teachers.
Oh my God.
Oh, there you go. That's the answer.
I figured, okay, next question.
I'm a teacher, right?
Yeah.
I
You wanna
teach
go?
community college, and I'm so glad I don't have a gun.
Okay, I figured,
Yeah.
I figured.
And it's not just because like I don't trust myself in case like a shooter comes in, because I definitely do not want that to happen. I do not want to be put in a situation where I have to protect children. I am not trained. Like, a person who is trained to shoot a gun will hit their target accurately 30% of the time. And here I am, an untrained civilian that's trained to be a teacher, and I'm trying really hard to get my students to pay attention to me. How am I supposed to like save their lives, right, by preventing a shooter from killing them, right? I can't do that. So no, that's my answer to you. I cannot possibly think of a situation in which a teacher should be armed.
I kind of knew the answer. I just wanted to say it's a bad idea.
Yeah, and we see, we saw Scott Beagle in the Parkland movie here. He was the history teacher that was killed. And his mother, who's become a huge advocate, she shows a picture of that hallway. And you see it packed with students. Now, if you get a teacher trying to be the good guy with the gun,
I'll forget it.
we know what's going to happen. I mean,
Chaos.
we just saw in Texas, a hardened target is not a deterrent, because most of the time the people are suicidal anyway. So we saw in that Texas church a gunman in there that knew there were plenty guns in a church in Texas. And he knew there was armed security there, and he was still able to kill 2 of them. And would we see, if you watch that video, after the gunman was killed, but they didn't know that, you see 6, 7, 8 other people coming out with guns. So if he wasn't down and started shooting back, what's going to happen in there? So the whole notion of a hardened target being a deterrent, and the same goes for the schools. They don't care if the teachers are armed. They're suicidal most of the time.
Trump has suggested if everyone was armed at the pulse, it would be great. In the dark, shooting, they all kill each other. It'd be given for that.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's a ridiculous.
You wanted to ask Cuomo what fairy tale he is living in. I want to ask these people what John Wayne movie do they think that they are existing
Tombstone
in?
or something like that. You know what I'm saying?
What John McClane Die Hard movie do you think that your life is, where if a bad guy comes in with a gun, well obviously I would just shoot him with my good guy gun.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank the panel very much for thank you to Sarah for a wonderful moderating job. Where do we go from here?